This podcast is a quest for well-being, a quest for a meaningful life through the exploration of fundamental truth. Enlightening ideas, insights on physical, mental, and spiritual health. The inspiration is love. The aspiration is to awaken new ways of thinking that can lead us to a new way of being well. Welcome to Body, Mind, and Soul Healing Conversations.
Valeria interviews Carolyn Schlam. Carolyn is an award-winning American painter, sculptor, and glass artist born and raised in New York City. She studied painting with Norman Raeben, youngest son of the Yiddish writer Sholem Alecheim, in Carnegie Hall Studios, and glassmaking at Urban Glass in Brooklyn. She currently maintains her painting and collage studio at 14 Gitana Avenue, Camarillo, California, 93012, and is currently working as an artist in residence at the Glass Arts Collective in Westlake Village, California. Carolyn is also a published author. Her book, The Creative Path, A View from the Studio on the Making of Art, is a treatise on art making from philosophical, psychological, practical, and spiritual points of view, and was published in 2018 by Skyhorse Publishing. Her latest book, The Joy of Art, How to Look at, Appreciate, and Talk About Art, is an art appreciation course from the artist's lens and is now available for purchase at booksellers everywhere. Carolyn's books for children, Art Smarts, A Primer for the Young Artist, and The Alphabet Club are available through her studio. In 2013, Carolyn was named one of the 48 finalists in the Smithsonian Museum Portrait Competition. Her portrait, Frances at 103, was exhibited in the National Portrait Gallery for 1 year and was subsequently acquired by the museum. It is in the permanent collection of the Smithsonian Museum of African American History and Culture. In 2018, her Mother and Child joined the prestigious Cedars-Sinai Art Collection. Carolyn has a strong interest in donating works to organizations and collections, especially those with a feminist orientation, and encourages interested parties to contact her. Carolyn Schlam's portraiture is infused with emotional content expressing the vulnerability and longing of her mostly female subjects. She explores portraiture in its many aspects: traditional, in which appearance and character are foremost; expressionistic, in which the inner life is heightened; and stylized, in which the image becomes iconic. She is known for her use of exuberant color, elegant drawing, and modern design. Meet Carolyn at carolynschlam.com. Here is the interview with Carolyn Schlam.
In your own words, who is Carolyn Schlam?
Carolyn Schlam is an artist, first and foremost, also a writer. I would call myself, if I was going to use two words to describe myself, I would say I am a seeker and that I am an expressive.
That sounds wonderful. So before we talk about some of the topics in your book, The Creative Path, A View from the Studio on the Making of Art, I have a few warm-up questions, as I mentioned off record. So the first one for you had to be this one. What is another word for artist?
Another word for artist. Oh, there's so many. Creative, obviously, that's we are conjurers. In a sense, we are like magicians. And more than anything, we are just like everyone else, in a sense. We just have the calling to express ourselves. But many people do, whether they practice art or not. So I could give you other words, but those are a few good ones.
Right, and it is. So in speaking of creativity, art, creation, from your point of view, what is to be a creative person?
A creative person is someone who has the calling to express themselves. It's not sufficient just to go about life and grow and have relationships. There is a burning need to manifest ourselves in some kind of concrete way that we call art. This is a calling that I've met many artists and I've taught many people. It comes to usually most of us early in life, and we just feel this urge, this itch to make something of ourselves and to make something that other people can enjoy.
Yeah, that sounds so good to me. I think we all have this appreciation and love for art and in creative works. I could save this for later, but I wanted to ask you now for some reason. How do you define beauty? What is beautiful to you?
That's a very difficult thing, and since I've written quite a bit about aesthetics, I dealt with the question of beauty. I mean, it's an essential question. Most people think that art is concerned with the creation of beauty, but that's a very limiting definition because, first of all, standards of beauty are always changing, so we can't get together and decide what beauty is. I prefer to use a standard that I call expressiveness, which means, or evocativeness, the ability of a work to communicate, because art is communication. We are all, as an artist, we feel something, we think something, and we're trying to share it with the world. And so it is a form of communication. All the art forms are forms of communication. So the more expressively we are able to communicate our feelings and our thoughts, that, in a sense, is beauty. Truth, that authenticity is beauty.
Wow, I love that, Carolyn. Yeah, authenticity is beauty. That's a wonderful phrase. Yeah.
That way, we're not limited by cultural standards or standards of one time or another. If a piece of art moves you, it's a work of beauty.
Boy, and you're very good at it. Yeah, I was looking at some of your drawings and paintings, and I couldn't stop looking at them. That's interesting. Yeah, it's amazing. It is, and you said magic. You used that word too today, so it has to do with magic.
Well, it seems like magic to the viewer, especially. Actually, it isn't really magic. It seems that way because most viewers only see the end result. They don't see the work as it's growing and developing. And if you saw the work as it was growing and developing, it's like going behind the curtain and seeing how the magic is made. Yeah. But because we don't see it, we think it's magic. It is wonderful, though. It is thrilling and wonderful. But technically, and we kind of feel like alchemists because we're taking, like in my case, I do a lot of figurative work and portraiture, and I'm just taking some gooey paint, and I'm coming up with something that feels like it's alive. People, a friend of mine named a painting of mine. She felt it was a portrait, that it was so alive she could give it a name. So that's pretty magical, I think.
Yeah, you talk in your book of the process, inspiration, and practices, everything that goes behind the scenes. But it's still, the process of creation has to be magical in some ways, right?
Oh, it is. It absolutely is magical. And also, what is ultimately created is never what the artist intended. It right. May be close to it, but we are not able to do that. It is always a surprise. The final work is always a bit of a surprise to the artist.
So it is magic. I have to say it. It is magic. It's creating itself. You are the conductor, you are the vessel, but it's the unknown being manifested.
That is so brilliant of you because, yes, the work is a tautology. It does create itself. You feel when you stand at the easel and you're about to make that first mark and you hesitate for a moment because you know that once you do, the whole process will unravel. And the end, in a sense, is already spoken. from the first moment when you make that first stroke. It is amazing. I have wanted to, part of the creative path involved the making of a painting. It was called The Story of a Painting. I taped a little tape recorder to my chest and a camera, and I kept taking pictures of the piece as it was evolving. And it is a dream of mine to actually make a film where I show and tell exactly how it's being made.
Right. Wow.
I think that would be a treat for, that would diffuse some of the magic. I don't know.
Right, because now we see everything.
Well, now we see it. Maybe it's not such a good idea.
I think it's a great idea. I love that idea, actually. Let me know. We'll be in touch.
Okay.
I have 3 more questions here for you that relate to life itself. What is life to you, Carolyn?
Well, I will use an analogy from my painting because that's who I am primarily. And I will say that life is a canvas. And it's a canvas upon which what we paint on that canvas is the story of our soul. In a sense, when you look at life that way, in a sense, everyone is an artist. Every person is creating the work of art that is their life. All of the experiences we have, which are unknown to us as our life evolves, fill in all the corners of that canvas. So,
oh, I love that idea. And that's true. In this sense, life itself is an art. It
is a creative act.
Creative work.
Life.
Right.
Sure. I mean, we know that every day we make decisions, we make choices that determine our lives, the color of our lives.
That's a very profound way of defining life, if it can be defined. And my follow-up question is, what do you think is the opposite of life?
Well, I can obviously not knowing yourself, I think.
Right.
Not coming to know and develop yourself as a human being is the opposite of life. I mean, I think, unfortunately, there may be some people who never get to actualize themselves, and that is a great loss. So
it is, yeah. I like the way you're saying that. So not knowing oneself.
Not knowing oneself, because that precludes, not knowing oneself precludes really everything that's wonderful in life. Love, pleasure, communion with others. If you don't know who you are, it's pretty difficult.
Yeah, so true. Would you say that is the purpose of life, to know oneself?
Yes, I would say that the purpose of life is to know oneself, to develop oneself, and to connect with others, to do what you are born to do, and what you are given the gift of life to accomplish, and not to waste it, to make the most of it. Yes, I think that's what we're here to do.
Yeah, I like what you have added to it. Yeah, I agree. What do you love most about being a woman?
Oh, I have loved, frankly, I love absolutely everything about being a woman, except the inferior way we are treated by others in our society. I love being a female. I feel totally female. But that is just a coincidence. That's just me. I'm not particularly into so-called girly things, but I don't know. I just enjoy my being, my sexuality. I think if I go too much further with this, extolling the virtues of femininity, I don't want to be dismissing anyone else's feeling about their own gender, but it's
Right.
just a personal thing. I enjoy being a girl.
Yeah.
That's all
I know you mentioned briefly about the challenges. That's my second question. What is the most challenging aspect about being a woman?
Oh, the most challenging aspect is not being fully recognized with dealing with men who do not recognize women as equals. having decreased opportunities, even in the gallery world. Most of the galleries are filled. Most of my students and most of the people who read my books are women, and most of the people who go to museums are women. But most of the artists in the galleries and museums are men. And that persists to this day. So that is definitely very hurtful, not just for myself, but for all the wonderful artists that I teach and that I have come to know. So,
do you think this is changing at this time?
Very little. I think now there are some women who are recognized, but now we have, for instance, in Washington, there's a museum of women in the arts. Well, why do you have to have a separate museum for women in the arts?
Right. Right.
It's like, are we a strange oddity that we should be represented? 50% of the art in the museum should be represented by, certainly of the contemporary art. In years past, women didn't have the opportunity to practice as artists, but certainly today. And the art schools are filled with women. I would like to see parity in the art world. That would be a very exciting thing for me.
Yeah, that would be wonderful, right? And who knows? That's a lovely vision.
We continue to hope.
Yeah. What is the meaning of freedom to you? What does it mean to be free, Carolyn?
Oh, that's such a complicated thing. It means I don't think you can be free if you're not healthy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't think you can be free if you're poor. It's pretty difficult. If you're abused, if you're, in dangerous circumstances. So there are so many people in the world who are not free. Freedom is an incredible gift. It's a privilege. And those of us that are healthy and are, able to support ourselves, we have to recognize that as a privilege. Privilege. I mean, in a sense, we are, I don't even know if you can be, I always think of that Bob Dylan line, "Are birds ever free from the chains of the skyway?" That's a line from a song. I mean, we all have restrictions based on who we are, our situation, and so forth. So there is no such thing as absolute freedom. But the more we have, the better.
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective. I'm wondering if you connect freedom to inner peace somehow.
Freedom and inner peace. Well, I think, if you think of someone like, I think of a great, great man, Nelson Mandela, who was in prison for 29 years or 27 or 29 years. He was in a tiny little room of a prison. And yet, what a free man was he, because he was someone who truly knew himself and meditated and was mindful. And so perhaps he was freer than people who roam the earth free. I do think knowing oneself is liberation.
Yeah,
I do believe that.
I love the way you said that too. Yeah, knowing oneself is liberation. And I agree 100%. Yeah. So my other question here is about the current situation. At this time, what do you think is the world's greatest need?
Oh, that's aside from the basics of clean water and all the rest of it, and food and so forth. Education. Education, I think, is the world's greatest need, because one cannot rise out of one situation unless one is educated. And when I say education, I don't just mean, although that's certainly important, but I mean education about oneself, meditation and all of the subjects. I think it is the most important thing. And I think it is the one thing that will has a potential of lifting a tremendous number of people out of poverty and other terrible situations around the world.
Yeah, beautifully said. And a question came to mind about creative works and art and creativity. Do you think that creativity is a path to that self-knowledge? Would you say that, or the other way around?
No, I think creative practice is a path. I mean, I did write a whole book about it, and I do think it is a path to self-knowledge, because, we were talking before about, you mentioned inspiration, and inspiration is the foundation of art making. Without inspiration, to inspire means to breathe in. And without inspiration, taking in something from the outside and connecting to it, there would be no art. We as artists, we need to have something to say. So we get that flash of inspiration. We see something or we hear something and we want to say something about it. So, and in the doing of it, in the trying to express what we feel and what we think, we get to know ourselves. Because we get to think, what kind of things interest me? What kind of things move me? Who am I? And so doing art practice is a form of self-investigation.
What is love to you?
Love. Okay, that's so big. Love is everything. Love is, well, I guess love is the latching of your heart and soul onto something outside of yourself. It could be a person, it could be an idea, it could be an object. You say, I love this place, or I love this. And it's what we live for. It's what we live for. Talk about inspiration. It is the ultimate inspiration.
I love your wisdom, Carolyn. I love your wisdom already. Yeah. What, where, and who is God to you?
Well, that's a difficult question for me because I don't consider myself a religious person, but I did say I was a seeker when you asked your first question. There is some sort of, this is a marvelous universe we live in, and there's something just awesome and wonderful about it. I don't know. There is an energy. There is something. I don't know. I don't really call it God, but I do feel connected to my time, to the world around me. And I certainly don't rule it out. I'm writing a new book now about, which is a new thing for me, which focuses on spirituality. Maybe I'm searching, trying to define these terms, and check in with me in a year. Maybe I'll have a better answer.
Yes, I'd love to interview you about that subject. How did you become a writer?
Oh, how did I become a writer? I've always, I come from a family of people who love words. So I have always loved words, and I love to use them. And I've always written, but late in life, I decided that I wanted to give something additional back to my students, and to take my knowledge of art and my understanding of art and put it into language and give it to, as a contribution. So I started to, back in 2010, to write what would become the creative path. Originally, if you noticed in the book, my teacher had come up with this set of principles called the 10 Commandments of Art. And my original book was called the 10 Commandments of Art. But as I got into writing it, the focus changed, and ultimately it became the creative path. I just found that I just love writing, and I wasn't finished. So I went on to write the second book, and now I'm working on a third. I consider myself now both an artist and a writer. They're both very dear to me, both practices. So, you know how you start something? You just start.
Right.
One day, you just start.
True.
So that's what happened.
So true. And you're incredibly talented in both writing and art, visual arts. So that's amazing. Talk to me about the connection between creative works and joy.
Oh, joy is something, one never knows where joy will be found. You think that you will have great joy at great events, or we look forward to these special events. And then we find we just had joy just walking down the street one Wednesday afternoon when we saw a beautiful yellow flower. I think joy is like inspiration, comes to us. We don't go to it. It comes to us, and it's everywhere. I think everything we need is out in the universe, and all we need to do is turn on the on switch. And sometimes we just do. And it can happen anywhere. It could happen in a swimming pool, on a city street. It can happen anywhere. And we feel that feeling of being connected and well-being. And that's what I call joy.
Do you connect joy to happiness, or they are somehow different?
I think happiness comes from your practice, all of the things that you do to be the best you that you can be. And including your exercise, your association with people, your work, everything. And joy is just a gift from the universe. It's something, I think of it as something very special that just comes to us every now and then, and we remember what it's all about, and we also remember what we haven't been feeling.
Right.
All those other times when we were worrying about this or that.
Yeah, I love how you connect joy to the unknown, the universe, inspiration, all these subjective, abstract kind of concepts. So it's not something that we can conceptualize or try to pursue, right? I like that.
Yeah. Well, I lately I've been working on this new book, and I've come across this word grace.
Yeah.
And I looked it up, writing the section on grace, and I looked it up, and it says it's an unmerited beneficence. In other words, it's something that you did not earn, that just came to you. You didn't deserve it. It just came to you. And that to me, that word is now circulating in my brain, and I'm thinking of grace, unconditional love. It's kind of, that's, if there is God, that's what it is. that whatever, that substance.
I agree. Yes, I agree 100%, 1,000 times. Yes. Yeah, unconditional love, right? Why did you choose to become an artist? And also talk to me for a moment about your artistic evolution.
Well, actually, I wanted to be an artist. I remember wanting to do some kind of creative activity from the time I was a small child. But it wasn't to be an artist. It was actually, my first love was dance. I wanted to be a dancer. And I actually studied dance, and I even trained to be a dance therapist. But I went to art school, too. I was in art school at the same time. And I just made a decision that I'd have a much longer career as an artist. So I just made that choice. But I mean, I always knew from the time I was a child that I had to do something. I had to do something creative. It's when you have that irrepressible urge and nothing else will do. But also I grew up at a time when it wasn't that expensive to live, and it was possible. It was possible to get a little part-time job and still go to art school. It's a little bit more difficult now than it was then. So I always knew I wanted to be an artist.
This is something innate.
Yeah, it's that desire. It's that burning desire to do something, whatever it is. It's, I mean, many, 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 many people have it. And many people have it and they repress it because they're told they need to, get the day job and so forth. I had my share of day jobs, by the way. All the artists that I know have their share of day jobs because we have to survive, and people aren't buying our artwork and supporting us. So, yeah, we all have day jobs. There was a time in my life when I had a regular office job, and I used to get up at 5 a.m. to go to the studio from 5 to 8 and work every day before I went to work. So that's what I mean about that irrepressible desire. You just find a way.
For most of us, becoming an artist, is that a choice? Is a talent that we need to find by knowing ourselves through self-knowledge and self-awareness? And the other question I have is, can creative works or creativity be taught?
Absolutely. First of all, I am, you saw the little quote from my book, from my teacher. He said, everyone has talent, but not everyone has rags. And I explain that in the book. And I agree with him that everyone has the ability. Certain people are more deft than others. They've done more looking. So they seem to be ahead. But I think everyone who has the desire and is willing to do the work can become an artist. I do believe that.
Anyone. That's wonderful.
Anyone, that's a big if, because you have to have the desire and you have to put in lots and lots of hours of work.
True. Yeah, it's work. Talk to me about your teacher for a moment, Norman Raeben.
He was the youngest son of the Yiddish writer Sholem Alecheim. He was born in Russia, and he came to the United States. He was born in 1900, and he came to the United States, and he was a painter. He studied with Robert Henry, who was a famous art teacher, and wrote a book called The Art Spirit, which is a famous teaching art book. And Norman set up a studio in Carnegie Hall. In those years, Carnegie Hall, the concert hall, had a big studio behind it, which was filled with artists, every conceivable kind of artist, painters, musicians, opera singers. There would be dancers in the hallways. It was the most inspiring place on the planet. And Norman had a studio in that building, Studio 1101, and he never placed an advertisement. You just found the place. I was one of the people who found the place, and we went there every day and worked every single day. And I was there for 7 years. I worked there 5-6 days a week for 7 years. This was after college. And it was an amazing place. He was an amazing, amazing teacher. And, I try to honor him in the creative path. There's a lot of, I found some of his old lectures, which I printed in the appendix to the book. He was quite a remarkable, and he was a very old-fashioned Russian teacher. And he was very, very hard on us. Mm-hmm. But he was very hard on us. But he created us. He gave us that fire. He fed the fire that we all had as very, very young people. And Bob Dylan was a student in that studio for about 6 or 7 months. He had the easel next to mine. Oh, it's so funny. And he was there. He still talks about Norman. I think it had great influence upon him.
Yeah, the way you talk about him, I felt the same way. That's powerful. And talk to me also for a moment about the Women's Workspace in New York.
The Women's Workspace. I'm so glad you bring that up. I was a young art student when I left Norman's class after the 7 years. He never wanted us to leave. But when I finally left, I needed a place to paint. I used oil paints and I had no place, had a small apartment, had no place to work. And I had a friend who was a writer who wrote an article in a paper called the East Village Other. It was like a little neighborhood paper. And he brought over the paper one day, and I noticed for me to read his article, and I noticed in the advertisements a little ad that said, studio space for rent, $15 a month. I said, this cannot be. It must be $150. Now it wouldn't even be $1,500. Anyhow, I called and I went the next day, and sure enough, it was a big loft called the Women's Workspace that had been started by the organization Radical Feminists, and it was a place for women to work unimpeded by men. As a matter of fact, men were not even allowed to visit.
Right. Wow.
And I got my space for $15.
That's amazing.
That was amazing. And I eventually inherited the loft because all the women who had been there before me kind of left. And I relaxed the rules a little bit, but I never changed that policy. I kept it women only. We let men visit, but
not work. Yeah.
No, not work. We needed to have, in a sense, a room of our own. And that's what it was. It was an amazing place.
Yeah, I like that.
Amazing. Yeah.
This is interesting because you mentioned earlier, and I read in your book about the 10 Commandments of art. Mm-hmm. That was Norman's, that he was created by him. Do you want to talk for a moment about that, the 10 Commandments of art?
Well, if you want to me to explain any of them, I'd be happy to.
Yeah.
I mean, these were just tenets that Norman came up with, he used to gather us around and we'd have these lectures, and the 10 Commandments were his, he reduced it to 10 principles. And I think some of them are very excellent. And like, for instance, there's one, I don't have the list in front of me, but there's one that says, never worry how it looks. And that's such a shocking thing for an artist. You think, oh, we're so concerned with the way things look and we have to get things perfect and everything. But art making is more than making things. It's about creating oneself as an artist and the experience of creating something. So even if it's, we don't worry how it looks, we just do it. So that was one of his principles that we were very confused about when.
Yeah.
And another one that I absolutely love was the one where he said, and I'm using it in my new spiritual book because I think it's such an important concept. When he says, "Say one thing, but really say it."
Mm.
And what that means is, in expressing yourself, don't obfuscate and put in, 69 colors and 25 lines. Just make your statement and let it stand. And I think that's something that is such an important lesson, both in art making, but also in life, that we don't try to distract ourselves, and we just speak the truth. We try to speak the truth and we let it stand. And I think that's so powerful.
It is powerful. I love that one. Are those your favorites, those 2 commandments?
Oh, I love them all. I've analyzed them inside.
Right. I can imagine, right?
I love them. They're great. I've elaborated on them so much. It's better to be stupid than phony.
Oh, I love that one. Yeah, that's my favorite for sure. Yeah.
That's so great. I mean, really.
Yeah.
To be your true self and to speak the truth. That's the ultimate,
Right, without fear.
That shows respect to when you speak the truth, and shows respect and gratitude also for the life that you've been given. That you don't cover up. You just speak the truth. It's great.
Yeah. You said, why doesn't this inspiration just continue? Why doesn't it last? So it seems like we look for that. You spoke earlier about joy, that we tend to chase or try to chase these things, but they will come to us when they want to.
It's a very important concept. The reason it doesn't last is because we don't realize it, but we've stepped away. We're no longer in the inspiration. We're doing something else. We're no longer there. And once the inspiration is gone, you're doing something totally different. And you're better off just stopping and coming back to it when you are, when you're feeling it again. Because if you're not feeling it, you're making it up.
Yeah, true.
And we don't want to make it up. We want to, that's what the whole thing is about, expression. So how can we be expressive if we're not feeling it? So that was that point about inspiration.
Yeah, I love, speaking of feelings and emotions, you say this in your book. As a student of art and of philosophy, I have derived certain concepts about the mysterious process of projecting our emotions and thoughts into visual form, that is, creative visual art. That goes back to that idea of emotions and thoughts and expressing ourselves through art and being real about it and true about it.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Not critifying it. Yes, absolutely.
I love that, the way you said that here. And also being true, because if we are not true, then we're just making it up, everything. And that's not living the art of life itself.
Exactly. Exactly.
Beautifully written, so it resonated with me a lot. This idea
so
of being true.
Yeah.
It can be felt. You can be felt, yeah.
I'm so thrilled when someone can responds to my work and that they get something out of it. Every now and then I get letters from people who just, even with my new book, The Joy of Art, people just got something out of it. And it's that's what it's all about, what it's all about. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Carolyn.
Enjoying it.
Something that you said that caught my attention. There's no way you can be anything other than yourself. It goes back to the idea of being real, being yourself. A great artist is never satisfied. This is an interesting one. Talk to me about that for a moment.
Never satisfied.
Right.
Because our feeling is we feel our inspiration is so strong, and we feel, I can't wait to express this. And you go to express it, and you're using these, greasy paints,
mm-hmm.
and it's so difficult. You know what it is? I think I'll explain it to you the best way. When you go and you are on a beautiful beach and you see an incredible sunset, and you say, and you take your camera and you try to capture
mm-hmm.
that sunset. And then you look at the picture and you realize there's no way that you can capture that sunset in a picture. And the reason is because when you're looking at it, it's the magnificence of the universe. How can you capture that with a camera? It's almost impossible.
So true. So true.
The only thing we need to try, but it only shows us, we can't compete with nature. None of us can compete with nature. It's too magnificent. But we're very creative beings, so we have a way of we do some things that nature can't do. We can make purple skies and we can change things up, and that's where the creativity comes in. We can make our own. We can be the God in our own universe. In a sense.
Yeah. That's what it's interesting too, that we are not separate from nature. We are nature itself.
Yes, we are.
Yeah.
Yes, and we always have to honor it, and it is the greatest inspiration, I think. I mean, think of the sounds of nature, how musicians incorporate them into their work, and that's where all of our that's our sensory world, and that's our vocabulary of art, is the sensory world, and so it's just so important. It's so spectacular. So that's why I say that it's never good enough. Sometimes you always, but in a way that's a good thing, because your reaction is pretty good. Let me try to do better.
Right. And you keep trying.
Let me go again. And you're always going again, trying to make the next thing better. Every now and then you do something that amazes you, and
then that's it, right?
Yeah.
And that's a finished,
that's it. But most of the time, no.
You say something interesting too. You said about failure and disappointment are essential components of growth in any discipline. That's true.
Totally, because failure actually is the best teacher if we use it as such. And basically, you asked me to define life before. Sometimes I think of life as just a school. That's what we're here for. We're going to school, and we're learning how to be good human beings. That's what we're doing. And we're learning how to be the people we were incarnated to be.
Yeah, I love that message. Yeah, true. And we're almost at the end. I have a few more questions for you. But before that, I have to mention the asanas. That's yoga you mentioned in your biography.
The asanas are postures or exercises. And the ones that I give at the end of each chapter in the creative path are creative. They're to exercise your creative muscles. They're exercises for your creative muscles.
Each section you have the asanas. So the practice, the exercise, that's great for those who want to practice, become artists.
Some of them are just not art exercises. They're just life exercises. Some of them are art exercises. They vary.
It depends on the topic, that you have. I have a few questions more for you, but before that, would you like to add anything or read a passage in your book?
There's a section called The Big Picture. There's no formula for understanding and appreciating art. You can't do it in your mind alone. You have to use your feelings to be stirred by it, and then you can try to use your brain to explain it, but the explanation will always ring a little hollow. If you could explain it in some other way, you wouldn't need the art. But the truth is, art cannot be explained. It can be experienced, but it cannot be understood with words alone. Think of a piece of music, a Beethoven sonata, for instance. You can listen to it 1,000 times and enjoy it every time. It stirs you, bringing up different pictures and thoughts each time. It is a stimulant and a conduit for many emotions. But what is it exactly? When I look at a VR painting of an interior, my eyes take up residence in this imagined room. I enjoy the tapestry of colors, the blending of textures, the rhythm of shapes. But more than that, I feel the tenderness of the hand that made this world, the sharpness of eye that selected these notes, the confidence that placed the pieces of paint so expertly. I feel the softness of that time. I have traveled back more than 100 years. I feel it. I am there. Time is evaporated.
Your book, it is for life. It's not just for artists. There are so many insights there. I mean, it's a way to really reflect more about the way we live and how to go deeper into who we really are. So thank you, Carolyn, for expressing that, bringing that to the world. We need more of these works.
Thank you for finding it. I really appreciate it.
How do you define success these days? What is to be successful?
Successful is doing your best, pushing yourself, being kind, doing no harm, and being open to love. I think that's what being a success is. It has nothing to do with how many paintings you sell, how many museums you're in, or anything like that, how much money you have in the bank.
Right. Kindness, being open to love. Yes.
Which is not that easy to do.
Right.
Open to love is not that easy to do.
True.
That's quite an accomplishment.
So true. If you knew you would die soon, meaning losing the body, would you make any change in your life or do anything different?
I tried to do this anyhow, but I would tell a lot of people how much I appreciate them and how grateful I am that they are coexisting with me on the planet. I would give lots of praise to everyone I have the chance to meet, because I think, I guess that's the only thing I do differently. Well, I try to do that anyhow, but even more, more concentrated.
Yeah, yes. What are 3 things about life that you know for sure as of now?
I know that life is an incredible gift. I believe that people are basically good at heart, with a few notable exceptions. And I believe that it's all worth it. So,
yeah. Thank you so much for your wisdom and your beautiful presence. Thank you, Carolyn.
Oh, thank you so much, Valeria, for all that you do. If there's anything I can do to assist you or do anything for you, please let me know.
Thank you. Where can we find more information about you, your art, your books, products, services, and future projects?
Well, if you just Google my name, Carolyn Schlam, you'll find lots of on the internet. My 2 books are available at all major booksellers, and my website, carolynschlam.com. And please, I encourage everyone, anybody who hears this or wants to reach out for any reason, to please contact me through my website. I love hearing from people, and I would appreciate that so much.
Wonderful.
So, thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you again, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you.
Bye for now.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening. To learn more about Carolyn Schlam and her work, please visit carolynschlam.com.
To learn more about this podcast, please visit fitforjoy.org/podcast. I want to thank the Patreon members, Lawrence McGrath, Mark Basden, Terry Clayton, and Aidan Vickrock. Thank you again for listening, and bye for now.